call to order the Okeechobee Utility Authority regular meeting of September 11th, 2018. Can I get everybody to please stand and join me in our pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While everybody's standing, we take a quiet minute, please, in respect of a board member who passed away last week, Mr. Thomas Markham. He was very big in the community, so if we could just bow our heads for a few minutes. Amen.
Hey, quickly too, I'm glad you did that because I was going to say something. A lot of people don't really know the Tommy Markham that me and you know, that was a big part of this community, developing this community back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they were the largest employer in this, probably 3 counties with the Markham Cannon plant and all. And just his love for this community, his love for the history of this community. And I've known him my entire life, but I really got to know him when he sat on this board.
I agree with you.
Yeah, he was just such a neat individual. We're very fortunate to have known him because he is a big part of this community's past. And I feel very fortunate to have sat on this board with him.
Well said. Okay. Determination of voting members. Melanie Anderson's going to be absent today. Mr. Clay?
Here.
Mr. Smith's here. Mr. Fadley?
Present.
Mr. Moldenhauer?
Here.
Mr. Myers?
Present.
Mr. Nelson?
Present.
Mr. Tremaine. The next thing on our agenda is corrected meeting minutes from the July 10th, 2018. I understand we had a correction to be made. It was brought up at the last meeting on who seconded the motion to approve the free connection to single-family residences. The record indicated it was Mr. Fadley, but in essence, after review, it was Mr. Nelson. I entertain a motion to accept the corrected minutes from July 10th.
So said.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, moving along. Meeting minutes from August 14th, 2018. What's your pleasure?
I didn't say anything wrong, but Harry, you're the
Look good to me.
I make the motion we accept as written.
Motion by Mr. Clay,
Second.
second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4. Guys, yes, sir.
What are we going to call it? I'm not voting today, correct?
You're discussing not voting. Yet we have.
I can't even second, can I?
I think in the past, they've been able to make motions, but they can't vote. And obviously be in the discussion, but don't vote. For the non-voting members, Tom?
We went through this one time.
Yeah, we're out of order again. Got it.
I think we went back and redid the motions even, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so let me.
I have trouble keeping up with who's in whose place, to be honest with you.
The voting members are Tommy Clay, Steve Nelson, John Kreisman, Michael Myers, and Harry Moldenhauer.
Correct, so I'm not voting, so I cannot second a motion, correct?
I would say, I would prefer that you not.
I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you, Steve.
We get that corrected on the record.
Wait a minute.
Was made by Tommy
Loading going
Clay,
again.
second by Steve Nelson to accept them.
That one is okay, sir, but
The first one.
On the first one.
correction.
agenda item number 2, I have Jeff Hadley as a second, so we have to rescind that and redo it if that's fair.
Okay,
Motion.
we're on agenda item number 2 to approve the corrected minutes from July 10th, 2018.
We would have to rescind the original and then redo it.
So we have to have a motion to rescind?
Yes,
I make a motion, we rescind
the action taken on
the action
minutes-
taken on
the minutes
number
of
2.
July 12th.
Okay, motion, Mr. Clay, second, Mr. Myers. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, now we will vote to approve the corrected minutes from July the 10th, 2018.
You need a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the corrected minutes.
Been here before.
July 10th.
Second the motion.
Motion Tommy, second Steve. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, now we're back
We
on.
gotta keep Jeff quiet over there.
Just for clarification,
I thought of that, right?
You would have had to do it all again next month.
just for my clarification, I was always under the impression that alternates on the board could discuss openly in motion because, you know, we're going to have a second, the motion could fail for lack of second, and we're going to discuss it before we vote. Am I wrong with that?
Well, you need a motion and a second, but I do think that the alternates can join in the discussion. They can't vote in the place of,
Correct, but can't he make a motion on that?
I don't think they should.
Okay. Okay, just as long as we understand.
My recommendation is that it not.
Somebody's really ringing our ears here. Okay, thank you. All right, agenda item number 4, guidance to on options to improve the budget. I think it's me. I don't think so. Maybe it is. There we go. Can you hear me now? John?
Mr. Chairman, you have in your board package one of two choices. You have the older, newer version, which we did send out a replacement by electronic yesterday, I believe, and you have the new paper copy in front of you. What staff has asked to do is to go back and look at what our current budget and/or the proposed budget to try and identify means to reduce expenses or to increase revenues for the coming year, FY19. And what you have in front of you are several suggestions for reducing the expenses. Again, these are suggestions. They obviously would require full board discussion, and if to be included in the budget, then of course that would be dealt with when we get to the public hearing for the budget. But we can go through a couple things. There was a request about reducing the projected employee increases from 4 to 3%. There was a vacant position that we could probably go ahead and eliminate for the year, which is a savings. And then just for board background, back in the early 2000s, maybe 2006, 2007, there was a big push to change all of our meters out from 1,000-gallon read meters to actual gallons. Hindsight being 2020, when you replace that many meters, say 6,000 meters at once, and they have a warranty period of 10 to 15 years, 10 to 15 years down the road, we have a lot of meters to replace again. And we're getting to that point where we're at year 12 on a lot of these meters, and some of them are starting to fail. So our costs to replace meters are going up every year to the tune of several, maybe 1,000 meters this year that we would be replacing. So there is an increased cost. So there was a place in the budget where we had a capital expenditure, and then we had a regular expense. And what we did is we tried to eliminate one of those cost items, and that's a savings of $125,000 proposed out of this year's budget.
Well, John, wouldn't we be better? What you said happens to a lot of us. You know, when we go buy 75 new trucks, you have the same breakdown at the same time, the same, you know, to go ahead and just start replacing 500 a year or whatever.
Yes, sir, that's what we actually have started doing this year.
Okay.
Is replacing, I think we're going to probably replace anywhere from 500 to 1,000 meters this year. And then the same for next year. And that's why we're starting. They have a 15-year warranty. So some of them that aren't going bad or reading wrong now are high reads. We're going ahead and swapping them out. So by the time they get to their 15-year warranty, again, we don't have 5,000 meters to do it once.
Right, absolutely.
So we're trying to spread it out. But again, it's one of those deals. you know, the idea was to replace them all at once, and that's what we did, and now it's coming back to visit us again.
Yeah, it just creates a
Well,
bad trend. I mean, at some point,
Well, we're actually doing two things. We're also going back and trying to revisit going with a different type of meter. They're called either AMI or AMR meters, which are remotely read electronic meters, which do offer some benefits to service to the customer. Let's say they get a high read, we'll get an automatic text notification so we can send somebody out right away, as opposed to finding it 2 weeks later, you know, when we're reading the meter. But all that comes with added cost. So we're trying to determine whether or not the cost outweighs, the benefits outweigh the cost for those more expensive meters. We have to put antennas out there to pick up the radio signals or drive by. So there are some trade-offs, but we will look at that since we have a significant number of meters to replace. Now's the time to do it rather than in 3 or 4 years.
Jonathan, on the meter, because they were by my place yesterday, I thought it was 20 years from when I
Sir?
saw it. I saw the meter yesterday because they installed one at the store. I thought, reading it, it had a 20-year warranty on it.
On some of the commercial meters, they are 20 years.
Yes.
For the residential, right now, they're, I think it's 15 years and 1.5 million gallons. So what we did is we did a test where we pulled 100 meters that were in that range from, say, 12 to 15 years or near 1.5 million gallons, and then tested them on our workbench to see were they within the AWWA guidelines for accuracy. And that's where we kind of established that at 12 years is when we start to lose some of the accuracy, which I will tell you our meters are mechanical in nature. So when they fail, they either run slow or they quit running, which is to the benefit of the consumer and to the detriment financially of the OUA. So slow meters or failing to read meters hurts our revenue stream. So again, we're going to be spending some money to swap out a lot of meters. It is going to cost us. The meters are about $100 thereabouts, but hopefully the accuracy of the reading goes up, so the revenue stream will go up accordingly with the flows. So on the commercial meters, you're correct. I think they're 20 years.
Gotcha. All right.
thank you.
So that's it on the expenses. Clearly, there's some identified ideas there with the revenue stream. The board is going to be looking at a 3% increase to the water and wastewater rates. There's an option that we have explored in the past with paying off debt and what that means to the OUA as far as the annual debt service. The trade-off with that is the earlier agenda item had a recommendation to do that. It was removed in the later one because there's a lot of moving pieces here. We have about 1.8 million that we got from the land. But another thing that we will be talking about this morning is the expansion to the sewer service. And if we did a project such as, let's say, Pine Ridge, that was $1.5 million, 80 new customers, we could use that money to pay that project and take on no new debt and get 80 new water and wastewater customers. So it's kind of hard to make a recommendation in this one to pay off debt and then not have that money for that construction project. So that's why that recommendation was kind of removed from here. We as staff obviously need to get some direction as to where the board would like to see that money spent, and I don't believe it's necessarily up to us to make that recommendation. But we can put this information out here to say, if we do pay off SRF2, we save $318 a year in annual debt service payments.
318,000.
I'm sorry, I didn't read it wrong. $18,000 a year in annual debt service, plus the interest, remaining interest that we would pay if we carried this note out to maturity. Again, that's an option, but it really, we have to step back and look at the big picture as to what are we going to do with the money if we're going to do projects, Treasure Island, Pine Ridge Park, Southwest section, it may or may not benefit us to use this money to pay down debt, even though if we went out and got new debt for these construction projects, the interest rate is much lower now than what we paid back in 2010 or whenever we took out these notes.
Well,
If I remember correctly, in about 2012, the board at that time took the direction to pay down debt. We exhausted our reserves. We had land, but we had land to hang on to. We went into a cash hemorrhage. We have been in a hemorrhage ever since. We never raised rates. We didn't do anything, and we've exhausted our reserve for all practical purposes. I think we've got the opportunity now to start building our reserves back to become healthy again. There was debt when I came on here. There's going to be debt when I leave here. I don't think the pay down of debt is as important as building up our reserves at this time. That's my opinion. We don't have property to fall back on anymore.
how much do we have in reserves? How much do we have in reserves right now?
Well, we have this land sales, which
Well,
is about
I understand
1.8
that.
million out of the operating budget. I'll have to defer that one to George, because out of the operating budget, we have set aside, like for the emergency reserve fund, the fire hydrant fund. Out of that operating account, it was at like $2 million.
We have three reserves.
Right.
We have roughly $500,000 required by the bond documents for renewal and replacement. We have another $500,000, which is called the 30-day emergency refund. And we have approximately $2 million, which is operating reserve fund. In addition to that, we have funds for water connections, wastewater connections, wastewater treatment plant. I mean, we have on the balance sheet $10 to $12 million worth of cash.
So we still have 10 to 12. We paid down debt, and we took half of what we had and paid down debt, if I remember right. Is that right, Harry?
I don't remember the
In
percentage.
2012, back in
Yeah.
we took about anywhere from $5 to $6 million to liquidate SRF3 and a portion of
Yeah.
SRF2.
And we were sitting on 17 million when we did that, if I remember right.
We may be. I know what the money that we used was money that was held in abeyance for Treasure Island to help offset customer connection costs.
Right.
When that project went away,
Right.
essentially, it freed up that money for other uses. Or we could hold it, or we could pay down debt, and that's what we did.
Okay, now, my question is, I really like the idea, not because the board member lives over there, but the southwest section, I think, is the one that has the health issues with it. And that's just my opinion.
Don't get any argument from me, brother.
But again, when you go over and look at how, and I rode through there again this past weekend, if we were to not pay down yet, use that money for that, or if we pay down debt and borrow more money, what would be the benefit? If we paid this loan off, this $318,000 a year plus almost $400,000 in interest, so that's $40,000 a year in interest. What would that do to our going in and borrowing more money? I mean, to me, the less debt you have, the better you look when you go borrow money.
The only for sure thing I can tell you is...
Well, he's going,
the only for sure thing... Throw him a quarter of it. The only for sure thing I can tell you is that the interest rate we have tied into SRF2 is 2.3%.
exactly.
And the new money, the current rate is somewhere less than 0.5% interest rate. So we save about 1.7. What I cannot tell you today is that if we go and borrow more money, they always require a certain amount of collateral into it, payment into it. So I would imagine we would have to have reserves from somewhere to help pay down a portion of the construction cost.
Well,
And we can manage that. I mean, there's ways we can pull
Move
money
and
from
do.
different areas. But what the chairman was alluding to, and certainly I am a firm believer in, the pot of money that we can use to draw from for projects is getting barer and barer. There's less money in it.
right. We're going to have to borrow money to do some of these projects. We know that.
Well, if we had a big expense, let's say something bad happened somewhere, and we had to go fix it, We do have some reserves, that emergency fund, things like that, we can use, but to have money set aside for, if you will, call it a rainy day fund, that pot is getting smaller and smaller. It is not completely bare, but when we make these expenditures, like the unnecessary $3 million to pay SRF 2 off, we have the $1.8 million from the land sales, we have to come up with
Another
$2
million.
million to put with that, to pay that off. So I'm just making sure that everybody understands the,
Well, you got 1.8 on the land sales, and you take $1 million from operating revenue fund.
yes, sir. That's what I'm just trying to share with you. We can
Right.
do it. But when we continue to pay out monies like that, along with the idea that every year to balance the budget, we're pulling some money out of the rate stabilization fund to balance it, that's where we get into this deficit spending mode, and we just have to be aware of what we're doing so that we know the long-term health, financial health is not there.
Well, I mean, we're sitting on 10, 11 million right now. And my whole deal is looking at the southwest section and how we can start a project there, maybe 2-phase, 3-phase, however we have to do it, to relieve the pressure over there. Every one of those houses, when you ride down in there, they've got those ditches in the back of them. And that's apparently where the high readings come from during the floods that you guys seem to have over there more than anybody else, because there's no drainage over there. And looking at what they just did over by your house doesn't look like it's helping them much at all.
No, it isn't. I mean, it's working fine for us, but it's not relieving their problem.
My point is, do we pay that down and get rid of the debt and then borrow more money to do a project like that? Or do we add more debt on top of the debt we have? That's the question I'm asking. I come from a school where if you can pay the debt down before you go borrowing money, that's what you do.
And from the staff,
At a very successful place, just so you know.
from the staff perspective, what we would like to get is some general direction from the board. So like if we say that we would like to do the southwest section, then I would ask that you give us that direction, that that's the project you want us to look into, and we will go to folks like the USDA or SRF and have some discussions with them about loan grant participation. And then we come back with a balanced approach that yes, we could do this money over here to pay off SRF2, knowing we're doing the southwest section, bringing on 600 new customers at $10 million, and how we could borrow money, loan
Against
grant,
that.
and make it all work. If we had that direction, then we could go and bring this back to the board so you can make a better decision which way you want to go.
And again, I'm just one guy speaking here, but I think the ace in the hole is here. It's not, don't have anything to do with green algae and all the stuff on the coast. What it has to do with is health concerns for children and adults all in that community. Again, one of these storms comes in that's out there now, this commode's not going to flush.
Out of the
Really, it's
It
not.
rained last night, it don't flush.
All of us,
So my point is,
all of us.
I think we've been chasing this lake stuff far enough. Let the government come in here and do that. Let's fix what's around in town with the people that are having issues that can cause health risk.
We keep
Yeah.
the pump out folks busy.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt there is the potential public health threat when somebody can't use their sink or toilet because their drain field is flooded. That in turn leaches into surface waters that get on things, dogs, people, whatever. There's clearly the potential public health threat. But there's other secondary effects, home values. If you can't live in your home, where do you go? I mean, because your toilet or sink can't, flush. There's a lot of things that could be corrected by putting in a central sewer system.
How many homes is in that area you live in?
Probably about 60. It's probably 30 on the street. That's
Yeah.
about 60, right in that Echo Estates area. But there's a
And then-
big surrounding area there.
Yeah, I mean, and then across here, there's probably another, going towards Tom,
You go over to Oak Circle. and
Oak
that-
Circle, so, I mean, there's,
The engineering report we did identified about a little over 600 lots that could be served from west of there, Oak Park, you got down Eagle Bay, you have his area, there's 600 to 700 homes.
If I may, something that you might be interested in, Tommy, was it last week we met with Connie and Dale and Marty from Senator Grimsley's office to see about moving that money from
Yeah, I read
Treasure
that.
Island over.
yeah.
Looks like with the letter, it could be doable, because so there's
Well,
$500,000
that's
funding.
where I was going next, is we ask that question, they, read the thing here, and it says, yeah, the money could possibly be moved with a letter. So there's $500,000 right there.
Oh, it's doable. yes.
Right, but I'm saying, go back to the stage of, hey, we're gonna do, what's it, Echo Estates?
That's my neighborhood.
That's your neighborhood. We're gonna start and do Echo Estates. And then, that way, we'll have the one main line in there that we've gotta have. And then, 2 years from now, maybe we do the one across there for Mr. Kelly and all them live. And pick up going towards Sable Lane. And do it in phases instead of trying to hit the home run and get, borrow $8-10 million. Let's go in and do a small project and with the intent of adding to it. That's one of the, and I hate to go back, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to see us put a line in when they put all that work in over there. To me, we should have laid a line without any plan at that point, if we could have just put a line in, because they did,
Well, the main,
80% of the
having
work.
the main, and then the rest of it kind of ties
into it, so, again, guys, I would love for us to be able to go down and do all this around the lake and do all the Okie Tannies and all these things, but in the reality of it, the coast is going to get the money. They're going to continue to blame us. I'm living in Winter Garden during the week working up there, and all that water up there, you can chase it all, you can get in a canoe and come all the way to Lake Okeechobee and never stick a paddle in the water right now. Because they are flushing it out of there just as hard as they can. Banana River up there is a estuary that's always been crystal clear water. Above, it's in the St. John side, so that water doesn't come this way. It's green as poison. You can see down about that deep. Usually got 6 foot of visibility in it. So, yeah, they're pointing everything at us, and Rick Scott and all these guys are, they're just trying to get elected. But at the end of the day, we need to do stuff for our community, inside our community. And I don't mean to be ugly, but I couldn't care about a snook fisherman on the coast. I can go over there and catch snook, and I'm not a snook fisherman, so I don't want to hear all that crap. My deal is I want to see what's healthy for our community, and quit being concerned with what everybody else thinks or says. I was on that lake 2 weeks ago and we caught fish. I have yet to find that big green slick they keep going back to. But we have an opportunity here where we know we've got a piece of property in an area that has no drainage, and it's a continual problem every year for these folks. And again, it's not because John lives over there, it's because all the folks that live over there. And when you ride in there and look at it, I wouldn't buy in there, even though as nice as the place is, because I know that you flush your commode and it's not right, it goes out in that ditch back there. Or ends up in that ditch.
Oh, that's where it ends up, and then it ends up in.
Yeah, then it
in
goes-
Oak Circle down.
Yeah, so I would like to see us take the opportunity to look at, is it best to pay the debt off, or is it best to use that money on this project? And not $10 million project. How much would it cost to do just the one section and set up where we can do another section in 2 years and continue in those small pieces?
Last year, we were fortunate enough to have the support of the county commission and city council with the Treasure Island project. I would hope that they would, for an area such as the southwest section where it is a public health risk, we can count on their help again this year to go to Tallahassee and start loosening up some funding for that. We've gone from an environmental risk to a public health risk. So I think that would hold a little bit more weight, personally, for the legislators. So I think what we're looking for, John, is, or you're looking for some direction for us that maybe we would like to identify a project, then get the option, come back to us with the options on which would, I know you'd have to reach out and see what money's available, and then weigh the options on interest rates versus
Pay down.
reserves plus pay debt.
There's no doubt that if a project was chosen, and let's just, for the sake of this discussion, continue on the southwest section, that the early engineering report looked at either at the project in total, about $8 million, or you could break it up into two pieces. Those pieces might be able to be further divided into smaller pieces, but I can share with you the problem with that is the smaller we go, then the long force main and pump station is not necessarily a viable option because of the velocities and the use of that longer force main. It's not to say we can't do it. We might be able to tie it in somewhere else. But the situation is that if we at least picked a project, we could identify, at least from a preliminary standpoint, the options for construction and then the options for financing it, whether it's a loan grant package from SRF or USDA or wherever the case may be, so that we could bring back more information to this board for guidance and decision making.
You've made the comment in the past that we could either go past Gills heading towards the city limits, or we could go back around by Tom's and up that way. So tell me the benefits of either one.
Are you talking about the force main?
Yes.
There are at least two options that we can come up with. One would be to go east down Old Dixie to get over to about, I think it's Southwest 2nd Avenue, where there's an existing force main. If it's a small development, that probably couldn't be such a bad way to go. But the problem that we have is all of that flow goes into where the old wastewater plant used to be on 6th Street, SE2, and that station receives a lot of flow. It's basically maxed out. So by adding more flow on that station is not necessarily a good thing, but I don't know that 60 homes would have that much of an impact. The other option that was laid out in the preliminary plan was to go north up Eagle Bay, cut up through the east side near Dewberry, go under the railroad tracks, and then cut up through along the city limit ditch and back that way to get to the pump station up by the airport, NW15, which is another big regional station that could handle the flow. And that was the other option for the two force mains.
Okay, so going back towards the lake is not an option. Going back to the ones we just refurbed there at Palm Creek or whatever.
No, that's on a vacuum sewer system.
Okay.
So that vacuum sewer system is tied into the force main that runs up Wooden Ditch and then eventually gets on 2nd Avenue and goes up to SE2 that way.
Okay.
So the extension of the vacuum sewer up to the Oak Park area, which was done to eliminate a small package treatment plant that used to be in there that served that. That's the only reason why that was done, and that's on the extreme edges of the service area for that vacuum sewer. What we would ultimately like to do is to take it off and put it on a more regional collection system rather than being out on the periphery. But that's only a collection system. That's not a force main.
Right. So if we did go Old Dixie, if we did decide to take everything to Old Dixie, what would it cost to make that station handle those 600 homes?
The only option we have at SE2 is to go back and look at different pumps that we might be able to put into that station. And I don't really know what that cost would be, but it would not be, it would be in the 6-figure range, not 7. So it'd be let's say, or $300,000, not a lot. So what we would, if we picked, if the direction was southwest section became the #1 project, I would suggest we go back and investigate the 60 home sites and how we get rid of that flow. What are the best options versus the other two that were presented earlier where we broke it up into, I was going to say it was a $5 million project and a $3 million project.
That was for Oak Park, phase 1 and phase 2.
Yes, sir.
But I think with 600 homes over there, you can go in about 4 phases. The way that's laid out.
But you still got to get the force main in wherever you go.
Right, and that's the reason I'm asking the question about coming back up
Right.
Old Dixie and adding the pumps there instead of having to put the line all the way
Well,
out to the city ditch and around.
it,
If we're installing force main, though, don't we want to look to the future and for 78 and Okeechobee and Buckhead Ridge and all that? You know?
Well, I'm just thinking about what's possible to get funding for without having to go for that $25, $30 million deal.
Yeah.
well, the total project is 12. So that's if we did everything and the force main up to NW15, it's around $12 million.
From Okeechobee?
No, sir. No, this is just
Yeah,
the southwest
that's what I
section.
thought. I thought it was another 15 for Okeechobee.
Yeah, I don't mean taking it all the way out there, but I mean install the infrastructure there in the southwest so we could bring something to that and move it on to the plant. You know?
Well, one of the things why we look
And
at
I agree. I'm just trying to figure out how to, with
Make the
the
pieces
limited funds that we're going to receive, because
Yeah.
we're seeing that, how to start building to
In
get some relief in
anticipation.
that section.
if we did the southwest section with the $2 million force main, let's say, that would be $2 million off the anticipated price of doing the Buckhead Ridge or the Okeechobee project, because it would just leapfrog, and we'd only have to go up to, say, Old Dixie instead of going all the way to
Right.
NW15. That would be, what we would know then is, and again, this is kind of where it all falls into pieces, if the option to purchase that property comes in November, and we know whether that project's even moving forward, it helps us in our design element, which way we go. Because if they are doing the option for Okeechobee, then it lends a little more sense to go with the longer force main than the shorter one to the east. If they don't exercise their option, it makes the other one look better because now we don't have somebody coming in from the south.
Right, and I understand that exactly. If we can get them to fund a portion of it with some our grant money and everything else, yeah, we can get the force main in like Harry's saying, but I'm a realist. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting on this stuff to happen. I've been on here 7 years, and I think we need to get a plan together, and if some of that stuff comes along, then we can incorporate it into our plan. But I think we need to go ahead and get a plan started and not wait on the government or Bass Pro or any of these guys. Let's go ahead and get a plan started. If it is a $2 million project, you get, I don't know, there's 60 houses in there, you could probably pick up another 15 or 20 coming down through there.
More than that, probably another 50.
So my point is, if you can spend $2, maybe $3 million and get 100 houses on our system, it really starts to help our community. And I don't care anything about the political side of it. I'm talking about what it does for our community. And it makes that a healthy region over there. There's still, I'm sure, people over there on well water around some of those areas, isn't there?
Not that I'm aware of, but it could possibly be.
But anyway, long story short, we can do some infrastructure and some fill-ins. And if we get that one done, when you guys look at that, what it would take to pull that over to down Old Dixie, we can see how many we can put in Old Dixie. If we could put 200 homes in there, if we could put 300 homes in there, if you can, then you can jump across the street from you guys and take in that loop on a phase 2. I'm just trying to figure out how can we do this instead of waiting on these $20 million projects. We've been, and again, Harry, me and you, we've been on these, I've only been here 7 years. You guys have been working on this a lot longer than me. And it's not coming to fruition. And reality of it is we're in the middle of the state. Everybody on the coast thinks that we should store water over here because all their food comes from Publix. You open the door and there's a massive amount of food in there. It never goes away. So they don't care anything about what goes on over here. So we have to take care of ourselves. And these are the projects that we have to start doing, in my opinion, is the watershed. It is what it is. That Treasure Island has been there longer than I've been alive, and I'm 57 years old. You go into Buckhead Ridge, that's been down there my entire life. So if it's so much damage, there's no more people in there now than there was 25 years ago. You know, if it's so much damage, let the state fund it. Let the government fund it. They allowed it, let them fund it. We need to worry about where our school kids live and what's in the middle of our community. And I don't mean to sound like a politician because I'm not. But I think this is something we really need to start looking at and start doing these projects that fix our community.
Okay. John, if this board so chose to focus on the southwest section, could we get you to go and to look for funding, engineering, design more than engineering, on plenty of options to bring back to us, because with the capacity of handling future growth down the road.
Yes, sir.
It'd be a problem, but
No,
first thing you need is direction on what we're going to do.
Well, if there is a direction like that's going to be our project, whatever it is, and let's say Southwest Section is a project, then that satisfies a lot of things, because one of the things we're going to ask is if we make a legislative request, what's the ranking of our projects? What's near and dearest, to us for future? To look at this project, there could be multiple phases to it. What are those phase costs? And most importantly, are those phased costs something that we can build into? Because we can't do just phase one if phase 2 and 3 can't build upon that. So how we choose the phasing, we do have to go back and drop back and look at the total picture. Even if that total picture takes us 10 years to build it, we still need to know that we have a way that we could steadily grow the system and not do away with something because we did it that way early on. So the phased approach is certainly valid, and along with that would be the cost associated with that phased approach, and then the funding sources. How could we get funded, whether that's through SRF, whether that's through USDA, a combination of other grants or appropriation or rates. All of that can be addressed.
The last feasibility study I remember reading on the southwest section was $8 million. Now you say it's up around 12?
No, it's 10, I believe. 8 was based upon, if you went back and looked at the study, it was one of these leapfrog projects. It was based upon Buckhead Ridge putting in the force main all the way up to NW15, and the southwest section just tied into it.
Well, that study I was looking at was the Guy Harvey study. The Guy Harvey was talking about, it was $5 for the east, or $5 million east, $3 million, I believe, for Oak Park.
That is correct. And it was tied into the force main coming up from Guy Harvey,
Right.
or Bass Pro, or Okatan,
Whatever.
whatever it
It's
is.
$8 million to sewer the area and $2 million for the force main from there to the plant.
To the plant, correct.
So that's where it goes to like 10 million. And it was only because that 8 million was based upon there was already infrastructure there, force main, by a preceding project.
Okay.
So if we do the 2 million now with this one, it takes 2 million off of some of the
Future
south,
Right.
whether that's Buckhead,
And-
Bass Pro, whatever.
Well, that's the thing the reason I'm asking these questions is we can't afford to do the force main all the way up. I mean, we know that.
No, we know.
But if we can go modify one of those stations, soup it up, in other hot rod terms, to make it handle more, how much more can it handle,
Yes, sir.
so that we can see what we can pull out of there, so that we can look at, okay, we can do phase 1, phase 2 over there, but phase 3, we got to have a force main.
Right, no, that would be a part of that process, like I said, that if we knew the phases, if we knew the project and we knew the phases, to transport the collected wastewater to the treatment plant, there may be different options open there too, and we would look at all of those.
Right, and when you go to in front of the legislation, it needs to be more about, it's got to be a health issue, and we're not worried about the green slime. It doesn't bother us over here. We get it all the time. We're more worried about our kids and our animals and our health.
There's no doubt that the potential public health threat with some of these projects is far greater than Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Far greater. Nutrient loadings, okay, we could swap that out and look at it other ways, but the situation is that in this particular area, as well as at least one other, there is flooding, there are backed up sewers, and that does lead to the potential public health threat. There's no doubt about it. Well documented.
Again, I've watched this thing now for a long time, and other than the little small projects we do, we've really not added anything to our solid waste, to our sewage side.
Just Pine Ridge Park.
Yeah,
That was by the court.
Yeah, when we were forced into that, it worked out, but we have to now start planning and doing these little projects that we can pay for through some moving that $500,000 around, maybe getting some more from Department of Agriculture, just, and do it in 3-4 phases. But we got to sell it for what it is. What it truly is a health hazard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess first thing we need to do is dedicate, if we are going to go southwest section, Pine Ridge Park, whatever we're going to do, we decide
The rank?
that first, and then John could bring us back information to decide what would be better to pay off debt, would be better to invest the money, or whatever, depending on.
Clearly, that is a topic under agenda item 14 where we rank the wastewater projects. But if we have that understanding now, or that consensus now, that the southwest section, it goes to this agenda item number 4 on the payment of debt or saving the money for future construction projects, that we can now bring back if we're to move forward with the design and financing. We can bring you back options. We don't have to have something today on how to use that 1.8 million.
No.
It's just identified, we were asked to identify potential savings, and that's all we did.
Right.
here. And that's why we bring it back to you.
If we're going to do a project over there and spend $6 million, then I want the accountant there to come back and say, your best option is take the 2 million or the 1.8 and put towards that, or we need to take the 1.8, add $1 million to it and pay this off. That takes us down to $300,000 a year, and we're going to add, the cost of this over here is going to be another $300,000 instead of us spending all this and having, okay, now we've increased another 300 on top of the 300 we had.
That will be a part of the plan that we bring back to you.
Yep, okay.
Hey, you gained 90 customers. Hey.
So again, all these were just basically brought up for suggestions. Certainly, there's some revenue issues, understanding what we want to do with the revenue. We have the expense-related reductions. Those discussions will be need to address when we get to the budget phase, or they could be addressed now. That being the reduction in the employee reduction from 4% to 3%. Savings of a position, and clearly we have the understanding of whether we raise the rates by 3%, and those would all be brought back to you here in these open hearings that we're going to have next.
Yeah, this is where we need to be going.
Well, yeah, we do nothing right now on this until we decide to pick a project and give him his market.
That's what I think.
Staff orders which way to go.
Well, on some of these, especially on the reductions and expenses
reductions
are going
we
to
gotta
be brought
do.
up this morning. in some of these open hearings, because you're going to identify whether or not you want to do the 3% rate increase to the rates, or whether you want to adopt the budget this morning, where the new budget that's been presented this morning only has the employee benefits at 3% rather than 4%.
Right.
So those topics are going to be discussed this morning at an open hearing. The ranking of the projects and how that, we'll bring that back, what is it, September? Probably the November meeting. We will have our information available to you.
All right, sorry I dwelled so much on that, but
Ready to continue on item number 4 now?
I believe so, unless you want formal action from the board directing staff to go on and pursue the southwest section.
There's an agenda item later on this morning where we were trying to rank the wastewater projects. I would hope that we could
Okay.
probably do it under
Okay.
that agenda item.
Then we don't need to do anything further on this.
We can either go to 14 now and rank, or we can just let it follow its normal. Let's just follow the normal.
Yes.
All right, agenda item number 5. I've got so much paperwork here, I've lost what I was doing. Public hearing, fiscal year 19, schedule of rate fees and charges, resolution 18-05.
need a motion to open?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we open the public hearing for FY19 schedule of rate fees and charges, resolution 18-05.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. Presentation? You want to do it by title only?
I don't see anybody here to fuss, so.
We can certainly go over.
You gonna fuss?
What we have here this morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, is a presentation on the proposed rate increase to the schedule of rate fees and charges for FY19. Staff worked on the premise that there was going to be a 3% rate increase towards certain water fees and wastewater fees. As a part of that analysis, we buried you in emails and paperwork here showing you the potential impacts of that 3% rate increase to two sets of customers. The large users, both residential and wastewater by meter classification, and then some average increases by various gallonages per month, again by classes and meter size, and to see where those impacts financially are to the typical monthly bill that includes a base charge for water and volumetric charge, and base charge for sewer and the volumetric charge for sewer. As a second portion of this deal, there is a summary page, correct? There's a summary page in there of those specific rates, fees, and charges that are proposed to change under this resolution 1805. So that handles all of the different rate charges, whether that is for fire lines, fire hydrant, laboratory fees, everything that is typically seen and billed under this particular schedule. Those items that remained unchanged are not included on the summary. The summary does include only those things that are proposed to change by this 3% value.
I had a question on the summary page, page 1 of the summary, 106, and just the first set of rates, water rates, fees, and charges. Those fees go up a whole lot more than 3%.
Okay, let's see.
Got current rate $845 for a residential meter installation and proposed rate of $1,000.
Yes, sir, that does bear some explanation there. Those particular charges are the physical charges to install the water meter. We can't go across the board and apply 3% to that because our parts, that we buy the parts, don't agree to just a 3% change. So whether it's the meter, whether it's the inline check valve, the meter box, these represent pure cost to purchase the items to install it and our labor cost. So the meter, you're correct, the meter charges do not reflect just a straight across the board 3%. They are actual cost to install the meter.
Add the new 3% increase?
No, sir.
That's just based, that's
3% has nothing to do with the installation of the meter. It is strictly, excuse me, the cost of the meter, meter boxes, inline check valve, labor. You know, it's just strictly a representative of that cost.
This is what our
today.
cost has gone up.
So some of them have gone down.
Right.
Some have gone up. Now, where this plays into account, there will be another public hearing later on to talk about whether or not you want to extend the 75% reduction that we have carried through this year. That 75% reduction does apply to the 845.
Oh, there's jump.
But the meter cost that you see here in these A, B, and C do reflect the actual cost of labor and materials to install those meters.
So the 75% that we've reduced it brings it down to 845 and 1280.
Currently, what it takes it from 800 and some change down to 212. That's what we're
Okay.
running under this
Okay.
year.
All right.
So what we have to do is we have to establish what the rates are. That's what you're doing here. At the next public hearing, if you want to project that 75% savings, it would be on these items that you adopt today. So right now, we're just trying to set what are the rates, fees, and charges for the coming year.
Yep. Gotcha.
Did that answer your question, Harry? That
Yeah.
845 is more than the 3%?
You know, we've kicked this can, and I say this every time. You know, we've went seven or 8 years now without any kind of increase to this community. And we've paid off debt. We've, as Harry says, and everybody else, that we've taken our reserves down to try to balance this thing. Now we're moving money around, and we're going to pay down debt to try to balance it again. We need to raise rates. And I'll take the whipping that they'll try to give me between here and my truck. But I think you have to, and I think we have to do this. You know, 3% in the past 7 years is not a whole heck of a lot. You know, not with what everything's gone up, and not with what we've done to as a board. We've run this as a very tight-knit business. We haven't run this as your typical, and I hate to say it, bureaucracy. We've done good with our numbers. We've done good at holding our costs. We've and still been able to repair a lot of stuff, and we've also been able to keep up with the demand of new equipment. So we've done a good job here. So anybody that wants to challenge that can challenge it. But we have to go up, and I think 3%, my personal opinion, is a good number. But I think we got to be realistic. Next year we got to go another 1% or 2% to stay in stride with this thing. And we've got to get some infrastructure going here, some more infrastructure. So my personal opinion is you move to 3%.
I agree with Mr. Clay. We've done everything possible to keep costs down to our ratepayers as long as we could. Unfortunately, it's been so long that it's going to be a little bit of a shock, but if we would have been trickling this along for the last 8 years, no one would have even, I don't think, would even realize what's going on, but we got some catch up to do. We hire an analysis Murray that comes in and gives us options, and this is the least painless option that we have. 3% and possibly 1% next year and 1% next year. Just to get rid of that 600 and some odd thousand deficit we're pulling every year to make our budget balance. So I agree. It's time. We'll all take a whooping on this, but
Well,
I'm
it's-
a ratepayer too. I
Yeah.
gotta pay it just like.
I pay the water bill too, and I use a bunch of it.
And there's no doubt, I mean, for the majority of the folks, based upon 3,000 or 4,000 gallons a month, the 3% is minimal. The large users, yes, dollar-wise, it's gonna be a lot of money, but their whole bill is a lot of money. I mean, if the rates, that make it go up by $300, but their monthly rates are $12,000, it is a cost to the business, and we recognize that, and we're all aware of that, but there are only so many things that we can do.
Yeah, and we've done all we can do, and it's time to move on and, I mean, you look at our debt's gonna be at 29 million is what we're gonna end up with this year, right? At the end of the year, 29 million in debt. When I got on the board 7 years ago, it was 46 million. It was in the mid-40s. So.
It might have been, yes.
Yeah, I think it was 46. So in 7 years, this board has done a remarkable job of bringing, $16, $17 million off of something that we were promised they were going to come. So we built. They didn't come. So now we're stuck with it, but we're paying it down. We've got till 2030, I think we pay this thing off, right? 2029, 2030.
Yes, it's right around
Yeah, but we keep continuing to peck away at it and keeping ourselves healthy. I guarantee you, if we had 16,000 hookups out there, we'd look like kings.
The only way we'd be having this conversation.
Right, but we have 4, so, or 4,400.
There's about 4,400 wastewater and
Yeah.
9,400
Yeah.
water connections.
And it's been pretty much that number since I've been on the board. So we need to do this. We need to raise this rate, and we need to concentrate on like I say, that Southwest section or something, and grow this a little more. It's time to start taking those baby steps.
So the last thing under consideration, Mr. Chairman, is the resolution 1805, which is in the back part of this package, and if you'd like, I'll read it just by title only. That when we close the public hearing, you would have that option to adopt it.
Since we were on a roll, I was gonna see if there was further comments from the board.
Okay.
Is there any further comments from the board? How about reading resolution 1805 by title only?
We're up to consideration.
Hold on a second, our attorney has got his hand up.
You need to close public hearing.
Yeah, Tom, this isn't, this is just part of the comments, so I was just going to read the resolution by title only. They can close the meeting and then discuss whether they want to adopt it.
Okay, read,
Yeah, how are you going to do it?
okay.
So just in reading what the title it is up for consideration under the comment period is Resolution 1805 by title only. It states, a resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the schedule of rates, fees, and charges for fiscal year, that would be a correction, fiscal year 2018, 2019,
Yeah.
and thereafter, providing for a filing of a copy with the authority clerk and providing for an effective date.
John, have you been doing the typing over there or what?
Title work?
Typing.
Typing.
I do type, but let me at least be very clear about this public disclosure. I suffer from FFS, which is fat finger syndrome, and so I don't always type very clearly. I have other folks to check my typing. So that is the resolution that is up for discussion, and we're ready to, if you want to close.
Are there any further comments from the public or the board? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion, Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clay and Myers at the same time. So we'll
Choose.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to close the public hearing passes. Okay, entertain a motion to approve resolution 18-05.
I make the motion that we approve resolution 18-05.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Discussion?
And that would include just the one typographical error on the date. Yes.
Yes.
With the typo? Yes. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 6, another public hearing. This is for public hearing for fiscal year 19, capital connection charge rates for water and wastewater, resolution 18-06. Need to open public hearing.
Make a motion that we open public hearing on FY19 CC rates for water and wastewater resolution 18-06.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank-
Motion carries.
So
John?
this is to keep our 75% in place?
75% discount on the meter installation charges and 75% discount on the capital connection charges. The AGRC, we've rolled that back to what was recommended by the consultant, and that's a fixed rate now going forward. And you can see in the comments there that we've had success. If you look at the sheet right after the page here, you can see we've had success in getting more customers over the last few years versus 2011 through 2015.
Yep.
So there is a positive impact from lowering, discounting the rates.
And with our plans, if we push forward with this wastewater side, I think to me, it's something you leave in place to get these folks on board, to help them get on board. I mean, you're going to look at 60, if we did just your area, you're looking at 60 houses there. When you start doing the numbers, at the end of this, we could end up with 300 on the, new hookups since we've been doing the 75% discount versus how many did we get before that, for a 3-year period or whatever, so.
Yeah, I really hate the teeter-totter thing where we abandon it this year, and the next year when the infrastructure comes in, putting it back in and putting it in, because there's a positive impact, so I agree with Tommy Flynn. Further comments from the board? Comments from the public? We've got 3 people in the audience. I'm so excited. I just love to ask you if you have a comment. Entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I'm sorry. We'll read it by title after this. Yeah. Motion by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. Clay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. John, will you read the resolution by title only?
Resolution 18-06. It's a resolution of Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the schedule of capital connection charges and meter installation fees for fiscal year 2018-2019, and for providing for filing a copy with the authority clerk and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Gall.
And again, just to be sure that this is a resolution that would be starting 1 October 2018 and will sunset September 30th of 2019, and the rates would revert back to the ones that you just approved in 1805, unless they are further extended.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution 18-06. Do you need me to read it?
No.
Okay.
Motion by Mr. Clay to adopt resolution 1806.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item 7, public hearing, resolution 1807, fiscal year 19 budget. I need another motion to open public hearing.
Make a motion that we open public hearing on resolution 18-07 FY budget, or FY19 budget.
Motion, Tommy Clay.
Second.
Second, Steve Nelson. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to open hearing approved.
basically, we make $10 million, we spend 7.5 on operation cost, and we got $2.5 million worth of payments. Is that basically what I see? Is that what everybody else sees?
There's more money coming out of the pot than going in the pot.
You just go ahead and let the adopt resolution 1807.
I mean, it's pretty easy to read. The big numbers stick out.
Again, this is where we get back to the discussions we had earlier about what we had presented as possible savings. Again, the big change that we would say in the preliminary budget that was given back to you in June had those items in there. This one removed those items as far as the employee benefit, the vacant position, the things that we discussed about the reduction of the meters. And that's what reflected in the budget that was submitted to you on Thursday.
Is there any
We
comments
could,
from,
we could certainly go through it if you need us to go through the summary.
are there any comments from the public? Any board comments?
Somebody say hello.
I have one thing that I've dwelled on since our last meeting, and I'd like to get board's position on this or their opinions. Our backbone is our rank and file workers. Taking a percent away from them, which is minimal. This is not going to stop our $600,000 a year deficit. It's only, $30,000? I'd like for the board to consider putting that extra percent back in for our workers. We're very fortunate to have the people that stay with us for 10, 20, 30 years. They need to be compensated. Last time I went to the grocery store and bought milk and bread, I don't know how a working family can get by, and not giving them the respect they deserve for the job that they're doing for us. I personally don't like that. I think they deserve that extra percent, even though it is minimal. So that's just the only thing I saw in the budget that I'd like the board to consider changing back to the 4% from the 3%.
Well, if I remember right, there's 1% of that is a bonus. 1% of that, or 1.5% of that is merit, and another 1.5% is cost of living. Is that right?
Now, the original budget that I was looking at, we have a cost of living of 1%, the employee merit increase was 1.5%, and the employee bonus was a 1.5%.
Okay.
I just did the math and the differences, and we're looking at 32,000. We've yielded the health care increases this year, let it sit back a year. So, I think it only right that we compensate our staff. I come from the labor world. My staff is everything, and I think they need to be taken care of.
Do we know right off hand what our average pay per employee would be? I know we got some guys at the top, but
Yeah.
Approximately $16 or $17
an hour.
That's good that you came up with that. I didn't think there was any way you would have known that. That's great, George.
Good. That's
Yeah.
basically they're starting at 12 probably and topping out at 28.
A entry-level position, what we call trainee, if you will, I believe starts right at $12 an hour. Once they go through the probationary status and they're hired on a full-time basis, they do get a little jump in their pay. And then depending upon where they work, they may be required to get a license to operate, like a treatment plant. There is another jump in that level because they go up to different pay classification when they become a certified either operator or distribution person. So they do start at around $12 and
Which is
go up
25 grand a year.
Sir?
Around 25 grand a year base pay.
At 12, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Which is extremely hard to live on.
Which is extremely hard to live on.
2 kids or a kid and one, you're right. So, Just my input, what I'd like to see this board change in the resolution is go back to the 4 from the 3.
So if you go to an 18, your average is 37.4.
Yes, sir.
What's our cost, our package cost? Is it 4, 5, 8%?
I don't think for the,
Package,
like for the cost of,
Insurance, taxes, yeah.
all of our benefits, including salary, would put us in the 30 to 32% range.
Above,
Total would be 30 to 32%, including payroll taxes, benefits, pension, healthcare.
so that takes them to 48,000 on average. Okay.
Well, I mean, you would take a $17 an hour
Yeah, I
person.
just, yeah.
If it's if it's $18 an hour, 1/3 of that would be 6. So it takes you up to $24 an hour. And that would be on the high end.
Well, the one thing that we have in this is that if you take the 1.5 is a one-time bonus, it's not a guaranteed deal every year.
Right.
So that's the piece you can look at that's flexible. You put in so that'd be 2.5% that would be fixed going forward. I don't have any problem with that this year. I'll probably get chewed out, but I don't have any problem with that this year.
I think that's fair, 2.5%.
I mean, it's a 2.5% increase. We are giving a 1.5 on top of that bonus, but that's just that bonus that's voted on every year. That's not a fixed every year. That's something, if we can do it, we do it.
That's a board decision.
And that's a board decision every year, but the 2.5 would be a fixed cost going forward, an added fixed cost.
the operative word is recurring, every year
Yeah.
from here on.
Yeah,
Both for the COLA and the merit.
yeah.
The bonus is something that the board elects to do every year, or I shouldn't say every year, where there was a couple, 2-3 years ago that we didn't do it. So it is an elective by this board. So what we changed, the cost of living stayed the same at 1%, and we lowered the merit increase and the bonus by 0.5%. That's where we picked up the 1% reduction.
Okay.
So we could add the bonus, I mean, what we're talking about is 1%, and if you wanted to add it back in, where did you want to add it?
Well, the way it was proposed originally, half for merit, half for...
Okay, so back to where we originally.
Yeah, the 1.5 would be the bonus, so you're at 2.5 reoccurring. That would stay with us, the 2.5%.
So my understanding, we would go back to the original quantities, which is 1% cost of living, and then 1.5% for the merit increase in the bonus. Okay.
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Yeah, I'm good with that,
Anybody else?
even though I'm the one that fussed about it.
If we don't take care of the employees, we're going to lose them.
Yes,
That's
but
the
Mr.
bottom
Clay,
line.
you were also the one that said it was okay, so.
It just washed itself right out. You're good. Any other discussion on that? Everybody on board with that?
It's fine.
Okay. Do we need to close public hearing?
Do we make a motion and do that, or what do we do here?
Close public hearing.
Okay,
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
so said.
Mr. Clay?
Second.
Mr. Nelson? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So now we need a motion to go back to your,
Do you need to read the resolution?
We certainly can. That would be resolution 1807.
1807 by title. I want to make sure the dates are right.
Yes.
Since he's letting me read this one, it probably will be wrong because the one he read is right. Resolution 1807 that's up for consideration. A resolution of the Okeechobee Utility Authority, Okeechobee, Florida, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2018-19, providing for a filing copy with the authority clerk, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, John. Motion to approve Resolution 1807.
so said.
Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Nelson. Discussion. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The date thing we talked about yesterday for a special meeting, we've approved it, so we don't need that at this point?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
I don't have to come back next week?
Yay.
We
Within 10 days.
can set that up if you'd like, in 2 weeks. We have some dates set aside.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Agenda item number 11, consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent. 4 items on the consent agenda. Then number 9 is the financial report. 10 is an invoice from Thorn Run Partners. 11, an invoice from Eckler Engineering on the surface water treatment plant improvements. And number 12 is the accounts to be written off. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion, we accept as written.
Motion to accept the consent agenda by Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, I was having a sidebar discussion.
You got a sidebar discussion? Oh, you're having one.
I made the motion.
13.
Mr. Nelson?
Second it.
Second.
5-0.
Agenda item number 13 is the Kings Bay Maintenance Agreement.
And they're not here, so we can raise it all we want to.
You were looking at cutting it?
Mr. Clay, you could, but remember that walk to your truck you were talking about?
It'd be long, wouldn't it? No, he just run his hand up.
You're taking Mary's place?
Wonderful, welcome. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, board members, we do this every year. Just as a refresher, remember Kings Bay is a community that has what they call a STEP system, the septic tank effluent pump system, where there is their collected wastewater is pumped from their septic tank into a force main that goes out to the Kings Bay wastewater treatment plant. Many years ago, it was up to the homeowners association to maintain these pumps in the tanks. There became some problems with the system as to how it was operated. The OUA was engaged to come in and reset all of those pumps, clean the tanks, and then provide the maintenance service for Kings Bay from there on. So every year we tabulate the amount of service calls that we have had for the wastewater system and the expenses, and we look back during that year to try to establish a monthly rate so that the OUA would break even on those maintenance costs, whether it's to float repair, unclog a pump, replace a pump, whatever that was needed during the previous year. You have here in your board package from 2004 to the current year what those monthly charges were that the Kings Bay wastewater customers paid. You also have a table below that where you can see the monies spent by the OUA last year in regards to equipment, parts, material, administration charge. And we are proposing a rate to go to $5.80 per account per month in Kings Bay for the coming year. To that point, I'll answer any questions or we'll have public comment if there are any.
something we do it every year.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The numbers are there.
You kept cost, it's lower than last year?
It's lower than last year.
Good deal.
Do you want us to raise it? We're fine.
How did I know he was going to say that?
So we need a motion, or
Need,
Yes, sir. We
Motion to adopt.
I make a motion that we adopt the Kings Bay Management Agreement at the monthly rate of $5.80.
Motion by Mr. Clay,
Second.
second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 14, wastewater projects. This is where we're doing our ranking.
Well, certainly, Mr. Chairman, board members, it is up for discussion, and this ranking decision where we move into is going to have give us direction in several different avenues. If for nothing else, for legislative discussions in the coming year, where the OUA wants to focus with projects, whether it's water or wastewater. Certainly, what we have given to you here is several projects that we've talked about year in and year out as to where we would like to move into with the wastewater irrigation system primarily. We are doing that on a regular basis with water, but we could do that in water systems also for Basswood. But the primary focus certainly has been exercising expansion to our wastewater system. And to that end, we have identified several projects here. And if those projects are based upon a septic to sewer, obviously it talks about that we should be able to get that legislative appropriation moved towards construction monies, is what they were talking about, not permitting and design monies. But we could easily move towards one of those projects if we were to select a project. And again, this morning we talked at length about the southwest section. If that was so choosing to be the project, then we could certainly take that direction, start looking at initiating a phased approach or a total approach, what that cost is, what the options are for funding, whether loans, grant, rates, whatever that may be, to bring back to the board in some future meeting, the total package looking at that particular project.
I'd like to see us do the southwest section in phases as number one. And I'd really like to see Pine Ridge Park as number two. There's two cheapest ones there. You might draw some attention. The one thing with the southwest section is we need to make sure that we're telling that it is a health issue. It is a health issue, and we're not making that up. This is an ongoing problem, and if we get another storm in here, it'll be a problem again this month. That's what I would like to see, because these are projects that we can do ourselves if we have to. This other $100 million here, that's pie in the sky.
And there's no doubt that if we selected, say, one of these projects, Southwest Section, just to say that that's what we talked about at length this morning. Again, it's just my opinion, but I would offer it to the board that if we were able to go back to, say, the legislative bodies and not only show that this is the ranking, that this is the project of choice for the OUA for these reasons, public health threat being certainly very most important. But if we were able to go back and say, here is the work that we've done on this project, either design, permitting, here are some loan grant options, look at this big loan, this is what we're going to have, how can you all help to defer and pay down some of that? But go in with a total package to our legislative affairs group, I think goes a long way than just going in and saying, here's a project we would like to do, how can you help us? And I think there are going to be some changes in our representation this year. We can certainly go back to Tallahassee, knock on doors, do the meet and greet, and see where we can go. And I think that for us, I had pretty good hopes last year that we were going to come out, and we got so close with a bill amendment, made it all the way to the governor's desk, and it got vetoed. Not the bill did. Our language happened to be in there as a writer, and so it eliminated us from other monies that might have been available through a small community grant program. I hope that we can get that in again this year, and if we can, it opens up a lot of doors towards other funding sources.
These guys are making so many promises. This year is this is the most absurd bunch of people I've ever seen on TV in my life, and it's a shame they've all we've got to vote for, because I wouldn't vote for any of them if it wasn't just my right to vote. They're terrible, on both sides of the party and parties, and so I think you're going to see that payback that they're going to do. However they get elected, they're going to be paying back those promises, and nobody's promising us anything other than that we're in the middle of the state and they'd like to make a holding pond out of us. That's the one thing they're promising us. So I think that we have to look at reality, and if we can get these $500,000 and $600,000 deals here and there to start doing these projects, but like you say, go up there with a committed we're doing the southwest section. This is what it's going to cost to do the entire section. We can do it in 2 or 3 phases, but it is a health issue. And go from there. I mean, going up there, again, this green mess in the lake is just it's voodoo dust. It's a joke.
Yeah, but it's the hot button issue now. I
But
just wonder if we're abandoning that 1 year too early.
You're not going to get anything. The coast is going to get it.
Well, you don't know that.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, water management's on a mission to own everything across from your house.
Yep.
That deal alone there's no telling how many billions of dollars that's going to cost. There's 110 shallow wells that they want to put on that ridge, on top of flooding it with, 12,000 acres at 8 foot of water, plus they're going to come up to the road. I've been through all that because of being down there on the ranch. They don't have the money to finish the projects they're working on. They got $2 billion worth of projects in the ground right now that they're working on. They just spent $88 million in Naples 4 years ago, and they have yet to put 1 gallon of water into place because there's 4 of them little birds in there. Just so you know. That's the kind of things that's going on with your water management money. You know, they've bought all this land between here and they own Alapata, they own Brady's, they own all that stuff out through there. You can't, how are you going to flood it? It's on the hill. So they keep buying this stuff. For what? Everybody has their own opinion. But if they do get the Pierce property out there, that's a 25-year project that's going to take billions to do. That's going to supersede anything that happens to us, because they've convinced the coast, they've convinced everybody in the nation they need another Lake Okeechobee to hold the water. So that's what they're going after, guys. They're going after flooding this land. They're going to build a dike so they don't ruin the marsh. It just boggles my mind at the stuff that they're trying to do out there. But none of them went out there and looked at them little hootie owls that pop their heads up out of the bank everywhere that are federally protected. But long story short, Harry, I agree what your concept is, but when you get involved with the water management and what they're trying to do around here, they've got money spent out. If they get these projects, they've got money spent out way past mine in your lifetime. You know? I think that with what Rick, our governor's, his whole platform is fix the dike. Well, fix the dike means they're just going to make it a holding pond again and ruin it.
Yeah.
We done been through that. So they're going to continue to spend this money around us. They're not going to spend it on us. We've been down this road and down this road, and on a $22 million project, they offered us $4. But if you pay when we did the numbers on the interest, we paid that $4 back. So they really didn't give us anything, So it was like this government deal is just a bunch of moving pictures, and the money ends up on the coast. And between what's south of us, southwest of us, and that old money in Stewart, they're going to continue to fuss, and they're going to continue to be the ones that get all the news. They don't ever come out into the lake. They always go up to the dock, up to the
lock.
locks.
Yeah.
So, and again, the guy I work for right now owns a home over on Sewell's Point, and they just voted down putting sewer in there. It's all on septic tank on Sewell's Point. Now, folks, there ain't no more money in the world than there is in Sewell's Point. Yeah, Mercury, Johnson, all that old money's there. So they're not going to spend their money. I just don't see them putting a lot of money in the infrastructure inside of this state other than to flood our property. Because that is their goal. Anything you go to with the Corps of Engineers, and water management, and most of the meetings I've been to in the past 3 years have had both there. So they're working together on this. And Corps of Engineers ultimately got to say. But, you know, all the land they own up the river, they can only flood it to a certain extent without harming the neighbors. So they're saying now that the best place to put this is on the Pierce property because it's at the mouth of the river. All the water that's coming down dirty there. They're not talking about doing anything with the water before it hits Lake Kissimmee or any of that. That's gold up there. They're not going to flood any of that. They're going to flood us. They send that water all down. I hate to be a pessimist, but I just think that we've got to go after projects that we can do ourselves with a little bit of help.
John, I have a question.
I'm sorry, but keep going after what you're talking about. But in reality, let's start doing a behind-the-scenes deal, getting something going.
John, if
We could certainly keep Treasure Island in at number 3.
Yeah.
And so that it doesn't drop off the radar screen, but we can easily do that.
if we chose Southwest Section, and we need a plan to take up to the legislature, engineering, whatever, has Senator Grimsley sent a letter to DEP, do we know, to get this thing, the money diverted? And I know that the money is for construction, but once you put it in our coffers, you know, we can do what we need to do, and just as long as we hold that money. Looking at money to do some engineering.
The letter has not gone to DEP yet. They were, if you remember from the meeting, they were waiting on OUA board action to get us some direction out of one of these 3 projects that we had talked about. Where did we want that money to go? So if the board action today is to say that money, the number 1 project is this project, whatever the project is, that's where the letter would be directed to go towards. So Southwest Section, board consensus is that that's going to be the number 1 project. We in turn would go back to the senator's office and say, here is the project. How can we get this letter to DEP and see if we can get that money switched from Treasure Island to, say, the Southwest.
Can't miss that meeting. So we're waiting on a decision today to get the Senator Grimsley to write the letter to DEP.
That is correct. And then once that letter is written, we will try to see if we can have the money not directed necessarily towards construction. Maybe it could be split 50-50 or something. Design, permitting, and construction. But DEP staff was saying that they would prefer it to be towards construction. However, I will tell you, I didn't see anything in our application saying that it would only be towards construction.
You see my point? I'm reaching out to show the legislature that we're working on this section. We've made a financial investment in it, and we're doing the permitting and design.
Well, clearly, if we bring back a phased approach on how to do this project, that's the project. And let's say at the November meeting, we would then pursue that project through the start of getting an RFP out and getting that process started. And so by the time that the spring rolled around, we would be well into a permitting, conceptual permitting and design of a project and have stuff, here's how we're doing it.
Okay. And we want to go up that with that if we do in our toolbox, not empty-handed. So.
Well, we just know that this money, if DEP sticks to that criteria that it's going for construction, and if we want to do it, what they want, I'm sure what they're looking for is assurances that we are going to go through with construction and not just conceptual ideas again.
And that's where I'm going with this, is with the phase part of it, and we get the 500, what is it, 550?
523.
Okay.
800.
So if we get the 500, regardless, we're going forward with phase 1.
Yes, sir.
You see, I don't want to have to depend on them. I want to put this in place that we're going to do phase 1 or 2 or whatever. Continually ask, like you say, take it up in your toolbox, but this is the project that we're doing. We need help with it, but we're doing it. And we, you know, maybe with the 1.8 in the, that we have and this other $500,000, that we've got enough to do phase one. You know what I'm saying? But now we need monies to finish 2 and 3. But we need to show that we're going down this road with them or without them. That's the point I'm trying to make. That we need a project that we can afford to do that's going to benefit our community the most. And I think Southwest Section is that piece.
So Tommy, would you like to make a motion that we do Southwest section in phases as our first ranking, Pine Ridge Park 2 and 3?
So said.
Well, if I may.
Trying to get board consensus.
If I may, I would, as a staff recommendation, I wouldn't say phases. I would say the Southwest section. Let us bring it back in November, and then you can decide if it's only going to be phase, like phase 1, or phases, phase 1 and 2. So that's my only suggestion. We drop the requirement for phases and just say the Southwest section is our #1 ranked priority.
Right.
Followed by Pine Ridge and then Treasure Island. That's going to be the 3 categories.
And we can do a design build as we go.
Right.
In November, to say I would be able to bring back a better package to all of you as far as showing how we can do the project, whether it's 1 phase or 5 phases,
What the costs
and what
are.
those potential costs and where the monies would come from on
Right.
how to pay for it.
In the meantime, we're doing that. We'll be looking at coming back up Old Dixie and what it's going to cost to do that side of it and everything. That's what I want to see.
That would be a part of the analysis. And
So-
so really what we do is we get these projects, and then we would then, I guess another motion would be so direct staff to see if we can redirect the $500,000 from Treasure Island to the Southwest section.
Okay.
Let's do your ranking first.
All right, I make a motion that we do, well, hold on just a second before I do that. I'm going to put them Southwest first, Pine Ridge second, and then Treasure Island third. And with the Treasure Island, we have several $1 million invested in that.
Yes, sir, we have some money invested in it.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, we were over 2 million, I know.
Yes, sir.
So those are the things that needs to be added to this when you go with the, you know, this is what it's going to cost. We've already spent 2 million or whatever on engineering and right-of-ways and all those things. But I make a motion that we rank it Southwest Section 1, the Pine Ridge Gravity Sewer 2, and Buckhead Ridge Collection System 3.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Treasure Island, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one. Treasure Island. I got y'all's attention anyway.
We are listening to you.
All right, motion by Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. Discussion.
I wonder if we ought to put Treasure Island second, because we have spent money on it, and we don't have to, do anything more to show that we're, committed to doing that project.
I mean, that's,
My understanding is where the Pine Ridge Park is 4 streets, 80 customers, is that what it is?
Oh, yes, sir, I'm sorry. Pine Ridge Park is about 80 home sites. If we were to do that project, I would certainly recommend, they don't have water either. They don't have the water service either, so we would actually be doing a combined project, water and wastewater, in Pine Ridge Park, if we were to elect to do that process.
But that's not part of the phase that we just finished with Seminole Design over there.
The phase we finished was the portion that was already on water and sewer by the private utility.
right.
That was, they abandoned, and
This
we
is
know
the
the process
backside
that
of
got
it.
to us. So it would be what would be the northeast quadrant, I think it is about 4 streets, that's about 80 home sites. We did the new collection system. We made sure that piping system was deep enough that it could be extended to gravity sewer up to those 4 streets.
Now, what I was getting was explaining what Harry said, Treasure Island, we've already got a fiduciary responsibility in there. Well, we've just done a bunch of work in Pine Ridge Park, too, that these people were excluded from. It wasn't part of that phase that that was done, but we can show an investment already in that area.
Well, I like what Harry's saying. If you go, I mean, I did a lot of riding around the past couple weekends. If you ride through the backside of Pine Ridge Park, it's spooky.
Yep.
I think you're right. I think because we have spent a couple $1 million on Treasure Island, and we've been pushing this project now for 10 years. Y'all were pushing it before I got on the board. I've been here 7, so, but I think you're right. I think I would move that to number 2.
Which
Just-
one? No, Treasure Island?
Treasure Island, yes.
Okay, the motion maker wants to amend his motion to,
Number 1, Southwest Section. Number 2, Treasure Island. Number 3, Pine Ridge Park.
there's a second.
Second.
Second agrees with the amendment.
What would it cost to put water in Pine Ridge Park in addition to the,
Well, if I had to just, do a wild guess, we had allocated up to 500,000. It would keep the entire project right about just under $2 million if we did water and wastewater to Pine Ridge Park. And again, that would pick up about 80 customers, both water and wastewater.
Harry, I bet you, though, you would have to do a grant like the county just did on Whispering Pines to get those people to do it.
Spooky.
well, maybe we should approach the county on that, I mean, that might be something we could do on our own,
Yes,
Well,
as well as
if the
Southwest
project,
section.
absolutely.
if the project was $2 million, then we would apply the 500,000 appropriation. So we're back to about $1.5 million OUA related monies. What Mr. Clay is talking about is the connection cost that they would have to pay, whether or not you're already reducing it by 75%, whether you want to take that additional 25% and waive it.
But they don't, their whole deal out there right now is they don't have a health issue like we do at Southwest Section, because the one that was overrunning was the actual plant up in the front that was going into the ditches, the one we replaced with a lift station.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to tell you is that I've seen some of that area when it's wet, and it's wet throughout. I mean, there is a lot of standing water. I don't have anybody that lives out there that has told me that they're having the same problems that we can see in the Southwest section. But I would assume that what I saw where we were working, the backyards do flood, and if you're on a septic tank, I would imagine you'd have problems flushing your toilet in those areas. I'm not going to say it's any better or any worse than the Southwest section, but I would think that those are poorly drained soils up there.
Yeah,
So from an economic standpoint and a possible public health threat, that might also exist in the Pine Ridge Park area.
Well, and I think we're going to have way better success getting the folks that live in Southwest Section to hook up. It's a little, it's they can financially stand it. I don't mean to say that I'm speaking for everybody, but they're in a way better shape than the folks that are in the back of Pine Ridge
Well,
Park.
Keep in mind also, though, the Pine Ridge Park is not going to allow the benefit of leapfrogging of other projects that would tie into the Southwest section if that were to happen. So again, there's lots of things that fit into that and whether or not it works.
600 customers versus 80 at the end of the day.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor of Mr. Clay's ranking?
Aye.
Opposed? You have the rankings. Now, you wanted direction and,
If we're electing with the Southwest section, I don't know if it would actually take direction or motion from the board to direct staff to move forward with looking at phasing of that project as well as the entertaining or finding out information on the financial side of it. If that is the pleasure of the board, that's so direction we can move forward. Obviously, we're not signing any kind of contract, but we could work towards bringing back that information to the board at a future meeting.
well, I understand that's the direction. We don't need that in a motion. That was all this morning's discussion that we wanted to do, but the motion would be to move the funding from Treasure Island,
That is
the Treasure
correct.
Island to this project.
Okay.
You are correct. We would like to get that in a form of a
Unless I'm
motion.
missing a piece of the
No.
Yes, sir.
But then, in the meantime, we're working on either we pay down the debt or we keep the money. What's the best, coming back with a recommendation on what you think the best way to go with that is. And as we do this project, John, if you come back in one piece, 5 pieces, whatever, I really prefer to see it broken up to where if we had to, we could do a piece of it on our own. We could take that 500,000 and that 1.8 and that million that's sitting there, and we could get, 100 homes on if we had to. We could do it ourselves, is what I'm trying to tell you.
If we get a little money, though, it makes more sense to put in the force main, because
If
then we
you
got
can get the more
infrastructure
money.
in place,
But I keep going back to, you guys have been riding this horse long before I got on it, and you ain't got it yet.
Well, let us bring it back, and then, like in this November, and we have those discussions, which way we want to go, projects, payback loans, whatever the case may be. And we'll bring all that back to you.
My whole deal is I don't want to get off this board in a couple of years or whenever they kick me off again, and we haven't accomplished any. All we've done is brought down debt, and we've worked on keeping everything healthy, but we haven't got the growth that we really need. Now we've got this thing down to $30 million. We can start looking at growing it a little bit, and I think those projects are doable.
We need to give John direction on.
If you go back where you wanted a motion to
Right.
move the state appropriation from where it's currently tied to Treasure Island, to ask our state representatives to put in a letter moving it towards the southwest section project.
Okay, we want to put that in the record as a motion for him to do that.
All right, I make a motion that we take the funds allocated for the Treasure Island project and have them moved to our southwest section
That is correct.
by having our senators or whoever you've got doing that,
To write the letter to DEP. Yes,
yeah,
we'll get that.
right at DEP, so that we can move forward with these projects, with this project.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay, we got some work ahead of us. We'll,
People are making my brain tired.
Check with you Friday, see how you're doing.
you stop by the office.
I'll do it Friday. Agenda item number 15, State Road 710 extension.
Again, one of my emails to y'all that we did attend the DOT meeting on the 30th at KOA. It appears that they have fixed one of the problems in that where they were bringing the road south to align with 14th Street to get across Taylor Creek. It effectively took most of our backwash pond out of existence, which put our treatment plant out of existence. But they look like they may have done a road alignment that would minimize any impact to the pond. So that issue may have cleared itself up by them realigning the road. However, the road is still running adjacent to our property where many of the wells are located. And they're within, probably 100 feet of our wells. To remind you, our wells are cased to about anywhere from 80 to 120 feet, so they're considered shallow wells. DOT is putting this road in. Obviously, there's no consensus as to what will travel down that road, what will wash off that road, whether there is a spill on that roadway. We talk about a potential public health threat. It is very viable if they put this road that close to our wellheads. Typically, in our wellhead protection plan, the setback requirements are 300 feet for any development near the wellhead. DOT is easily within that 300-foot zone. We have asked them repeatedly to push the design of the roadway further north by a couple hundred feet, which will give us that buffer between our wellhead and their right-of-way.
So wellhead protection requirements can't be enforced then?
I'm not going to go that far. I won't say that. Because there are land development regulations by the city, by the county, and a comprehensive plan by the city. So they would be really not adhering to both the comp plan, the LDRs, or the state statute. You said whether it's enforceable, I don't know that issue. We get off into the legal side, administrative law challenges. I don't know where we're at with that.
What's a well field worth? What's it worth?
Here's the dilemma I'm in with the well situation. The Water Management District wants us off the lake. We have a plant down there that has 5 million gallons per day capacity. We have 1 million gallons per day capacity at the groundwater plant, and they will only allocate upwards, I think, a little over 3 million gallons for our consumptive use permit. I have asked them in a tentative identification that if we lost the groundwater plant, could we move that allocation of water from the groundwater plant to the surface water plant, since we have excess capacity? And the consensus is that probably wouldn't happen.
Well,
It would require us to build a new groundwater plant. I don't know that, but I'm just telling you, it was forever for us to get this consumptive use permit. And they have stated in some of their brochures, like the design basis, that potable water use, that's an incompatible use for Lake Okeechobee.
that's a storage facility.
So what I'm saying is, if we could just move the groundwater plant to the surface water, we have capacity there. It's no harm, no foul. We have the serve, but I just don't see that happening. So if DOT takes us out of the water production at the groundwater plant, it really would effectively mean we've got to build a new treatment plant somewhere else. So if you're asking me what is the worth of that plant, the worth of that plant is to build a new plant.
The cost of a new one.
I mean, that's the way, in a short answer, that's what I would be looking at, and that's what I shared.
One point.
It's not what that plant is worth, after depreciation of 20 years of existence. It's really the cost of a new million-gallon plant somewhere else.
Well, that's my point,
45 minutes. Replacement.
is replacement.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we need to take the approach and throw water management under the bus, like we did throw everybody else on the bus. So let's throw them underneath there. That they're not going to give us the extra allocation. They're going to kick it out the rivers and let the coast fuss about it. So build us a new well field. Take that one, build us a new one.
Well, and again, that was a part of, the request that we have made to them both at the presentations, and certainly in the letter writing. I think yesterday was the deadline in the brochures that I sent y'all to get any public comments to the DOT. They're aware of that, and that's what I've asked them to have a sit-down meeting, because for me, in my letter to them, for planning purposes, we need to know what their intent is. Are they going to go through there? Are they going to impact our wellhead setback distance? If so, they need to share that with us now so we can plan accordingly. And we know what our options are.
And why not draft a letter from the whole board, or Tom, you draft a letter from the board and go through the find out the legal sides of it with our LDRs and all these things. And
Well, here's the reality. They're going to put it where they're going to put it regardless.
right.
And it may take a condemnation proceeding to deal with us. If they condemn it, we're looking at a replacement.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. They're aware of that. I've shared that with them, that we would not I told them I couldn't speak for the OUA, but my position is that we would not go freely. It would require some replacement to it.
Well, that's the reason I say, why don't we get a letter on record
We can do that. We can do that.
from the board that you write with all the legal ramifications that we would be looking into.
I mean, they got to be prepared to condemn it.
Yeah.
They would have to be prepared to take it by condemnation.
Yeah. And condemnation, I mean, you know how long
And
that
bear,
can take.
and
if
bear
you
all
ride
the, well, what they would try to do is come in and get what's called a quick take. A quick take means they ask the judge to go on and award them the title to the property so they can commence their work and reserve the, of course, they got to pay they got to pay up front what
To do
they
that.
think the value is. But I don't know that they're contemplating how much the total cost is going to be to them. Because they have to pay the cost of the proceeding, the cost of the experts, the cost of the landowner, as well as you're looking, it's going to be expensive to the DOT. Now, will they change the route? I don't know. But my
They're very
experience
difficult.
dealing with governmental authorities, they're going to do what they set out to do. They'll go through all the hearings, go through all the motions, but they're bound to determine this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. But I think if we get a piece of paper in front of them that, like you said, you couldn't speak for the board. Well, if he puts a letter together from the board,
On behalf of the board.
on behalf of the board, then it's there. And this is that we're, like you say, we're not going to go away and we're not going to let you run, trucks right down the side of us, And-
It certainly is a function.
So, I mean,
They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, if
we
they
can't
just-
stop them.
if they want to get with water management and get our allotment from out there, fine, and we're good with that too.
If they make us whole, so let's say they're able to move our consumptive use quantities to the surface water plant, then pay us for what that plant is worth, and we walk away.
Walk away.
But if they can't move it easily enough, then they have to replace that quantity somewhere else, or at
And-
least provide the financial resources for us to go get it done.
And again, Tom, I think we need to.
Well, we should be made whole.
Yeah,
We should be
need-
made whole.
Exactly. We need a letter to them stating that we will fight to be made whole. Or how, you're the lawyer, so. But I'd get something in front of them.
First draft in the morning.
Clearly the OUA doesn't necessarily want to prevent, the motoring public access to bypass. That's not the intent here. But the intent here is if in doing that, it impacts us, then we should be compensated accordingly so that we don't have to walk away financially impacted by that.
Absolutely.
And so it ought to be a win-win situation for everybody. And that was the intent that we tried to leave with them, that we do need to be made whole. Because I did remind them that in the 04 storm season, that was the only thing providing water to the city center for 3 to 4 days until we were able to get the lake back operational. That was their only source of water. So many folks went without, but the hospital, the jail, the
Everything
central
on this
business,
grid over here that has to have it.
that was the only people that got water.
So I-
They have to recognize that is a viable piece of the OUA as far as water treatment and water supply.
But you got on that piece that it kept running was your hospital, your
Oh, yeah.
old folks home, and your jail.
Well, and we don't seek to impede progress. Matter of fact, we welcome the bypass. It's just that the
We will-
location of it is just not
Yeah.
appropriate.
And we will be made whole.
Oh, yeah, we will be seeking to be made whole, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're impacted, adversely impacted by this.
So I think you need to get that in front of them.
Okay? We will work with it.
All right, moving along. Agenda item 16, public comment. Any comments from the public? Come on up, sir. Please, when you get up here, please state your name.
My name's Ron McGuire. I was here last meeting, and since then, the OUA came out, did a great job in putting my yard back together. Grass is growing, but I still wonder, I think Mr. Conlon said, let's not let this get under the table. I was just wondering, has anything gone further about what they're going to do?
This was the asbestos pipe, or the,
Yes.
pipe going?
What we have done is I've reached out to DEP to talk to them about what the requirements are for asbestos cement pipe, because when we touch it,
Right.
there's going to be issues that we have to address, primarily air quality. And that's what I wanted to get confirmed with DEP. Where do they fit in with the asbestos pipe? So once we do that, we will move forward with the engineering RFP, where we go out and advertise for an engineering RFP that will come in and do the design project. Once we select that engineer, they will be, if this board so directs, will be tasked with doing the design project, putting together the bid documents to replace it, put it out to bid, and then all that beautiful stuff that's in your neighborhood gets torn up and we put it in new piping.
I totally understand it's a Band-Aid, but I appreciate the fact it came out so fair. My worry is that harmful to us? Every time if the pipes are broken and they put this Band-Aid on it, is that affecting us at all?
Again, under the water quality concern, the answer is no, because we go through and flush the main, disinfect, do the bacteriologicals, and put it back ready for public consumption. Where the biggest concern for the asbestos cement pipe is if you were to dig it up and break it, it becomes what they call friable then, and it can emit fine little fibers in the air, which if you breathe them, then leads to lung issues. So the real threat, if you will, with the asbestos cement pipe is when you cut it, break it, pull it out of the ground, that appropriate measures are taken to minimize the airborne issue from fibers.
Okay, because we were left a broken piece going back a year or so ago, about this long, that we had on our garage. That was left on the side.
And if it's asbestos pipe, then we can come by and pick it up and dispose of it properly for you.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest that if it is asbestos pipe, and it
They
is,
said it, somebody said it was, I'm not sure.
well, we could still, if you let us come by and pick it up, or call me, you have my card,
You're right.
and call me when you're going to be home, we'll come by and pick it up. Just because you have asbestos pipe doesn't make it dangerous.
Right, I understand.
But if you were to use it as something that would cause it to break,
Right.
separate, and then those fibers become free, that is the cause for concern.
Okay.
So if you want to call me, we will come by and pick up that pipe and properly dispose of, regardless whether it's AC pipe or cast iron, PVC, we can dispose of it properly.
Okay.
So if
thing
you
with
call me
the
this
thing with
afternoon,
asbestos-
let us know.
is it's wherever when you bust it, or if it's that high off the ground, that's where it stays.
Okay.
It doesn't, it doesn't sink to the ground. Now, the wind can move it and everything else, but that was what they taught us in all those abatement classes when we were doing Shands.
Right.
So that's the reason they vacuum everything. They vacuum bag everything to pull that out. And so there'll be an abatement company probably involved in removing that pipe.
Well, there's way, if we pull it apart and don't break it, then there's really, the concerns are very little. And what we would do, what we've done in the past, is you wrap it in plastic, tape it.
Oh, yeah,
put it
we
on a
double
truck,
bag.
And you haul it to the landfill. And that's only to make sure that fibers don't come loose.
Right.
Now, if you do other things, like where you have to crack it or break it, then the typical response is you put a water hose on it, use a wet saw, and you cut it so that it doesn't become airborne. And that's the approach. But from my perspective, what we've done in the past, the best approach is you just pull it out of the joint, whole piece of pipe, wrap it in plastic,
Bag it and
take it to landfill and dispose
I
of it.
believe that piece probably was part that broke with, because we've had geysers coming out of that yard,
Well, there's some PVC in that area, and there's some cast iron, so it
This
could.
is looks a little different from PVC. I thought that was like, and I don't think anything's iron or anything like that. It has like a fibrous material to it. It's about that big.
Okay, well, call me and I'll come out, we'll get it and look at it and tell you what it is.
Okay.
And then we can dispose of it.
All right, and I do appreciate it.
That's probably.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. We're making flower pots out of it.
Items from the attorney.
I'm still missing some evaluations.
Dadgummit.
I didn't call any names.
Well, you should.
I'm still missing some evaluations.
More than welcome to drop them off, I'll fill them out for you.
And you sent those too on email too, didn't you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I know it's me.
It's also me.
That's okay. I'm waiting on you guys.
You're good for another month. Items from the executive, you said you were done?
That's all I want
I
to speak
thought the
to.
way was.
That's all I want to speak to, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Items from-
Tom, on that, are we going to go to where we can do instead of, I haven't even looked at it. So did we change the,
You've got 5 criteria instead of 3, 1, 2, 3,
up to
you've got
5?
5, which makes it easier, I think.
okay, good. Good.
I'll get it. Drop it by, I'll be happy to fill it out for you. Just sign it, give it to them.
Your turn.
In your board package, we had a rather extensive meeting on, I think it was last Thursday, with the contractor at the Whispering Pines project. It was PRP Construction Group, as well as the engineer and OUA staff. It was labeled as a progress meeting. One of the things that we needed to make progress on was a payment request, that there was some discrepancy between some of the quantities they were asking for that were not necessarily documented in as-built constructions or what we had. So on Thursday, we were able to come to a consensus on what the pay request should look like. We got it Monday morning. I emailed it to you. I would like for the board to consider this payment request number 3 from PRP in the amount of $181,766.70. They are doing a good job out there. The project is moving along, and this does represent work that they've accomplished in the last month.
So that's what the board recommends, right?
The staff recommends to the board that they do
Staff
approve
recommends,
it
I get right.
in the amount that's there, 181,766.70 to PRP Construction Group, and payment request number 3.
I make a motion that we approve agenda item number 18, which is payment to PRP Construction, Whispering Pines, water main improvements, and the sum of $181,776.70.
166.
$766.70.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
One other thing that two other things we need to bring up is briefly, on Thursday, for part of the day and Friday morning, I had the pleasure of doing a telephone conference as the State Historic Preservation Board reviewed all the applications that they have pending for the special use category, of which our building was in that category. I should be able to get that ranking hopefully by next week, and I'll be able to share it with you. I think there was 73 applications. Last year, I'll remind you, there were 60 some odd applications, and we ended up being 12, and we did not get funded because the legislature, well, I shouldn't say why, the legislative allocation didn't go far enough to reach to our project, so we did not get funded, as you're aware. Where we rank this year, again, hopefully will be low enough, and the funding will be great enough, and we can move forward with our repairs to the building.
I did bring that up to Ms. Williamson when I was asking her about pictures for the tank.
Okay.
And just to plant the seed. And she, of course, her memory's like an elephant. And she banked there back in God knows when, But anyway, I brought that up to her about redoing the inside and the walls and all. So she was excited, so I'm sure that's reached the Historical Society.
So we'll find out something next week, and again, if we're 10 or less, well then we have obviously a very positive hope that we would be funded. If we're in the 20s or higher, maybe not. But again, we got through the conference call. It was one of these deals. They were having the meeting in Tallahassee, and you could join in through webinar or telephone. Both Tom Hammer, our architect, and myself were on the phone to answer questions. I can say they had fewer this year than last year. I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign.
Who knows?
Compared to some of the questions they had on the other people we listened to, that's a good sign. But again, I just don't know. I know we had at least one or two board members that were on the committee that championed the cause, that liked the work that this board did in mothballing the old building and what it looked like versus what it used to look like and where we would like to take it. So they were very pleased with that. But again, there's a number of people in the committee, and I don't know where we'll rank out. So I'll keep you appraised. We should know something by the next meeting. The second thing, it has to follow up on another email that I sent to you about a customer issue where they had a huge water use.
Water use, yeah.
And it was, again, they were both a water and wastewater customers. And the process that I go through is try to identify where the water use occurred, if we can find it, or a leak in the yard. And then I do have some options where I can have an impact, if you will, on their bill. Either the penalty issue I can remove because we are working on the bill. It's not like they were ignoring it. If they had determined that it was an outside use, broken water main or something, clearly I can adjust the sewer portion of the bill because it did not make it into our collection system and we didn't have to treat it. She is adamant that there is no leak. So my hands are for the most part tied. The bill is what the bill is, and I can work a payment plan, but the bulk of the bill still is owed by the customer.
How much was it total? Do you remember?
About $1,800.
There's not a swimming pool next door?
900 and 900.
Exactly.
Is there a swimming pool next door? Is there a swimming pool next door?
That was one of the questions that I asked, and we've had issues in the past where a neighbor did a lot of landscaping and no one was there, so they hooked a garden hose and watered their trees and sod.
People steal anything, won't they?
So that has happened in the past. So I did ask her, and she said, well, we checked with our neighbors and security, and they didn't see anything. They had plumbers come out. They couldn't find evidence of a leak outside. We pulled the meter, had it tested. The meter's fine. It's only that the house is being showed. Maybe somebody flushed the toilet and the flapper didn't seat well for several days, and then it closed up. I can't explain it. I can only tell her that, again, we have the meters run with water go through them. And so the 140,000 gallons or whatever that went through the meter, I can't do anything about it. And clearly, when I look at it from the standpoint of our older bond covenants and loan documents that talk about no free service, it is very, very problematic to categorically just write off a charge. The other problem that I will tell you that I would have from a staff perspective, the people up front, our customer service clerks, see this quite a bit with somebody with a bill. It's, to have a policy and stick to it, which is that, we can forgive penalties or we can write off sewer charges when the leak's outside. Our policy is quite clear. They get charged, and we work with the payment plan and how they get by that. So we need to know that that's what we currently operate under. And as I shared with the owner, I've done what I can do, and it only can come, they always have the option of coming to the board. So she sent me an email, which I forwarded to you, and wanted to bring it to the board because this is ultimately the last stop. And I can only share with you her concern, the concern we have with staff, with, knowing what the policy is and being able to adhere to that policy. And sometimes I just don't like the outcome, but it is what it is.
But it's $1,800, so we're looking at probably 900 water, 900 sewer.
Yes, sir, about that.
And there was nobody there, we know,
Realtor.
real estate broker, yeah.
That's
Well,
almost
that's
got to
another
be
thing,
what it
Gary.
was. If there's no leaks, it's almost got to be a
had to
toilet
go
or
up,
something was
had to
left
go up.
running
Yeah.
after a showing.
I don't think there's anything we can do for it. I personally, by policy, there's nothing we can do, and I really don't want to have policy on this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not something that I'd like to be able to have as my only policy, but I don't know what the alternative is. Because if you do it for this person, then it ought to
Yeah,
be
do it
across
for-
Well, it
the
sets a
board.
precedence.
Right.
Yeah.
It's across the board. I mean, I look at it from the perspective, obviously, from the owner, but I also have to look at it from the perspective of the service clerk who has to deal with this on I don't know that it's a daily basis, but it's probably at least weekly where there's a high bill. Now, granted, they're not always 141,000 gallons. They might be 12,000 gallons or 10,000. But if the opportunity is there that they are a water and sewer customer, and if the leak was outside, we could write off $900 because it didn't enter the sewer system. I didn't have to treat it. But in this case,
We don't know.
they did not provide me any assurance that it was a leak outside or stolen or anything else.
But the place is for sale, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's what the owner has told us.
It's been vacant for quite a while.
I think I recall her saying 18 months, but I think that's in her email.
Should have
but I
had
don't-
the meter
Should have
pulled.
turned the water
Well,
off.
turn it off.
This is the cart after the horse, but the horse after the cart.
I mean, they're gonna sell it, I mean,
Gotta leave the property.
at this point, if she doesn't wanna pay it all now, or doesn't wanna go on a payment program, just say, well, okay, well, you pay it when the property sells.
Do we have to file a lien with that?
Would you have to file a lien, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, for that amount, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Just tell her we'll file a lien.
The lien would have to be taken care of for her to give clear title.
That's what I'm saying, though. If she doesn't want to pay the $1,800 out of pocket, file a lien against the thing and let her pay it when she sells the property.
I wouldn't go so far as to say she wouldn't pay it. She was just looking for some kind of latitude or leeway, forgiveness, if you will, of the full 1,800.
Well, I go back to, if you change this, you got to change it from now on.
Yeah, don't set a bad precedent.
Right, so you can't, when you have policy, you can't waver, you have to stay with policy, unless you change policy.
Unless you make an amendment to the policy.
Yeah, and
I wouldn't go down that.
at this point,
No,
just the bare charges of what the water costs to go in the house and what it costs to leave the house is all you can do.
And show otherwise. I mean, if it's different if a pipe breaks, or it's different if someone needs to empty out a pool, whatever. Because you know what it's being used for. But in this particular case, she hasn't proved where the water went to.
And it's like you said, they're showing the house, somebody flushed the commode, and that was,
If you're 141,000 gallons, if it was a leak outside, it would show up.
well, not only that, but the house has been sitting empty for 18 months, I mean, come on.
Well, I think I sent you the consumption record. You could see they were very, very low for many months leading up to it, and the month after that, it dropped back to 25 gallons. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it had to be something that was left on by accident or whatever, and was shut off many days later. And again, if they can't provide assurance that the water leaked outside and didn't enter the wastewater system, I have to assume it was in a sink or a toilet or something, and I ultimately ended up with that water out at Cemetery Road.
John, you tried everything within policy to resolve this. You tried everything possible. She was not receptive to the resolution to this point. So I think our hands are tied.
We
We've
followed
done
protocol.
everything we can as OUA to,
All right, I will reach out to her again and see where we can
and,
work.
yeah, if she's not receptive to paying the bill, then we'll have no option.
Oh,
but
I
file it.
don't, I would go that
I know,
far.
if she doesn't, then we'll have to follow
Okay.
it. That's my.
And if she wants us to file a lien and it be paid at the end of the deal, so do that.
Yeah.
Turn your water meter off, will you?
Okay. That's basically covers what I have.
You want to report to, or, we have a webinar on Thursday. You want to pass that on to the board if anybody wants to participate or not? You forgot about your webinar, didn't you? It's 2
It's on my
o'clock.
calendar. I've had so many things come and
It's
go.
2 o'clock on
This
Thursday.
was on the USDA. I think I sent that out to everybody.
Oh, did
and
you? Okay.
I believe so. It's an hour-long webinar just talking about the potential and possibilities for funding scenarios. I don't.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize you sent it to everybody. I know I signed up for it, but I didn't know everybody else was.
I believe I copied the entire form.
Yeah.
Would you resend it again?
Okay. Any items from the board? Have a good day. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Meeting's adjourned.
Very good.
Very good. Last